So today we're talking to Lucía and Diego, which are the they're both writers and artists, and they're based out of Mexico, and they have a publication called DiSONARE. So we're going to be looking through past issues and their personal projects as well. And I guess we could start with our question that we always ask is, how is your coronavirus life?
What's going on? You're in Mexico City right now, so let us know.
What's it like over there?
Well, I probably already had the coronavirus, so it's good that I'm past that. That's in the past now. No, I don't know if I had it. I was really sick for 10 days, a couple of weeks ago. And it was a intense experience. But the situation in Mexico City, as we were talking a while ago, it's quite similar to your experience, you know, confinement and readapting to this kind of reality, but also trying to see like I don't know, alternative ways of being here. And I don't know if,
in terms of the experience living in the city, I think all the emptiness aside, I think what we're experiencing is a big lack of information. We have our health secretary who's contradicting our president constantly, so it's just hard to make sense of the figures and the actual reality on the streets. What we do see every day is the informal economy on the streets, as if nothing had happened. So there's just a lot of dissonance around, for sure.
and
And
as
no
I was,
one is with all the people that are still going out to sell their things, and no one's arresting or policing them for doing that?
No, there's a lot of freedom. So you can move around. There's no real restrictions. There's just a lot of fear and a lot of confusion.
as I was telling actually Sarah Rufino in an email some like a month ago or so, about all this like informal economy or free economy of the puestos, you know, the people who work in the street. I was telling her that like when I felt that the city is kind of like a body or an organism, and this the presence of these economies are like the last impulses, you know, when the doctor puts so it's like the last little things of life, you know, still pulsating in a way. And more we see the city that's coming back to life, but very, very slowly.
And are there
What we do get a lot is a very interesting soundscape of the city as well, because we get all these sounds from vendors and a lot of sounds that we normally filter out, but are now very present because there's no traffic, you know, there's not the usual noise of the city when it's active. So we get a really interesting undercurrent of sounds becoming very present.
As well as a lot of the fauna of the city that we can't listen to when there's all the traffic and all the hecticness in the city. There's a lot of really great birds. The other day I saw an article of the birds in Mexico City and how we can hear their singing now. So it's like a really nice sometimes soundscape of the street vendors and these birds in the city.
and have there been protests in Mexico City or no?
There have been a few, but the protests have been concentrated more in the state of Jalisco, where the actual murder of Giovanni Lopez occurred. So here we are only getting a few remnants of it.
And then what has it been like for you to make your work during this time? Has it been productive or difficult?
For me, it's actually been quite productive. I never finish a project. I'm trying to work on that. So it's been good to go back to certain projects, and I'm editing a film and doing some sound work, doing some writing, trying to like structure a lot of my projects into more cohesive dialogues. And I've been reading quite a lot, so that's been good. and we spent some time in where Diego's from, in Valle de Bravo, and there's an empty water tank in the back of the house, like in the kind of in the middle of the land. And so I've been doing this kind of meditation that I go to the tank and put my head in and start like singing inside the tank, which is nice. I'm doing some sort of echoes and vibrations, and I record it with my phone. And so I've been doing these strange things that I would never do probably in the hecticness of work.
Yeah, I would say in terms of work, I've found it very soothing, and I've really found a space to work, so no issues there. Yeah.
And then can you talk about how you decided to start DiSONARE? When did this happen, and what was the initial inspiration?
So we were living in New York at the time. We were, aspiring writers and artists, and we found out that there was a big option of places to publish work like ours in the United States, but not so much in Mexico. We saw there was a big vacuum of publications in Mexico that were devoted to emerging artists and writers, so we just wanted to open up a platform and a space.
And at the time, we were already collaborating with Rodrigo, actually, who was also in New York, and with other friends. And we really had this idea of trying to build a community, trying to start something new. And we were looking for places to publish, Leo was saying. So we basically just decided to start our own little journal. And we had no idea of publishing. We had no idea of how, distribution and the endless angst for funding and all this. It was very like a naive impulse, but we really wanted to bring together friends, also friends from Mexico and friends from New York, and that's how it started.
So your magazine has different themes. How do you guys come up with the themes?
Yeah, when we began our very first issues, we did not concentrate on themes specifically. We were just trying to bridge two communities and just showcase the work of certain writers and artists of the time. But then as we grew into it, we did decide to sort of curate the issues around specific themes.
Yeah. Also, it was fun I think the story of the name is funny because we were interested in the idea of voice and of mask or of illusion. So the etymology of persona means mask, right? And at first we wanted to, or it means like the mask, the voice that you can hear behind the mask. And we wanted to legally, put our name of Personare, like the brand in Mexico, not the brand, ¿cómo se dice la marca? The brand, and it already existed in Mexico. So that's when we came up with the idea of DiSONARE, and which means dissonance. It means almost the same as personare, but just with the voice being dissonant while someone speaks. And we connected way more with that term or with that conceptual element. And I think Rodrigo was very crucial for this name and for this whole conceptual building.
And then your magazine is in both languages, right? It's published in, some of it's translated and something is in Spanish and some is in English. How do you decide what to keep in its original language and what to translate? Does it depend on the person you're working with?
Well,
I think, yeah, one of the important issues that we consider when talking about translation is which pieces are relevant and important and can cause an important difference in both cultures, right? So if a piece resonates, that is written in English originally, and it resonates with what's happening in the cultural zeitgeist of Mexico, then we translate, and vice versa. So that's why some pieces just remain in their own languages and others just go in both.
also because it would be so expensive if we translate the whole issue. You know, it would be way bigger and more expensive. And also, I like this term that Ulises Carrion, well, no, sorry, not Ulises Carrion, Felipe Ehrenberg, who's another conceptual Mexican editor and poet that we're very inspired by. He used to have a press called I don't know how you pronounce it, but Beau Geste Press. I think it's in French, but he had it in England, and he used this term inconsistent bilingualism, which I really like, and we relate to it a lot. But this project of his was also to build this like transnational projects or collaborations, and also from a standpoint of something, you know, like very small and very intimate. So we relate a lot to that kind of genealogy of conceptual or experimental publishing.
And how has it been to experience two different communities of artists and writers in New York and in the FA? Are they similar when you come together? Are they very different?
I would say they are different for sure. Many reasons, but one of them is that I think the community in New York has dates back much more, and it does have a sense of a tightly knit community, whereas in Mexico you can feel how it's evolving and how it hasn't really acquired like its final element as it does in New York.
I think also in Mexico it's a little bit more compartmentalized, you know, cataloged in like contemporary art, publishing, the poets, the experience. Like there's not a platform that can make collisions more between all of the elements. And there's so much going on in Mexico, and of course the independent editorial history or memory is immense. I think Mexico is a much more complex atmosphere and community, and there's many communities, you know, and New York is way smaller for us, even though it's so diverse and there's so much happening. In Mexico, it's immense. So I would also say that in Mexico, we're more related to the scene of experimental music and sound and performance. And in New York, we're a little bit more connected to editorial and probably theoretic things. So in New York, it can be a little bit more investigative, and in Mexico, it's a little bit more, there's more chance and there's more, I don't know if it's open, but there is less of a theoretical building or columna,
Like
structure. Yeah.
So I was wondering also, especially hearing, what was it that you said of broken bilingualism?
Inconsistent bilingualism.
Inconsistent bilingualism. I was just thinking about your title, DiSONARE, like this relationship on the one hand to personhood. The idea of dissonance as a kind of framing ethos for the publication. And then on the other hand, like the fact or idea that not everything has to be accessible to every person who picks up the magazine, right? You're making something sort of inherently not intended to be consumed all by the same person necessarily, right? Both in terms of the context that you're speaking to and in terms of like the language accessibility of the publication. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like your ideas about dissonance, like how you think about this as a framework, and also like whether you think about incompleteness as something which is necessary or something which is actually a good thing in terms of how we look at and think about art and writing.
First of all, I would say dissonance is It's pretty much the way we understand contemporary living, you know? So I was very struck by the question you sent us regarding how we understood harmony and how we understood dissonance. And we were thinking about how we don't really understand contemporary living through harmony. So we just, the way we analyze the world and the way we understand ourselves in it is through dissonance. So that's why we take that route.
Yeah. I would also say that, like in general, experience is kind of very fragmentary and there's a lot of residues, you know, like all the time there's a lot of kind of remains or little pieces of like archaeological ways of putting things together. So, so in a way, like this could feel as something that is like there's less of a freedom or of a proposal kind of reality. But if you really like kind of concentrate in these fragments or in these residues, you can see that there are like lines, you know, there are traversal lines that connect all of these things. So they're more kind of like these ideas of travel. Like if you concentrate on something or if you want to investigate more about that, there's a whole line, you know. But I personally like to play a lot with this idea of what's visible and like what's hidden and what's revealed in the publication. We don't want to give everything to the reader or to the viewer, but just like these little fragments of it, and create a dialogue that is dissonant in the sense of diversity as well.
And to answer your question about how we, the result of our bilingualism is that not the whole magazine is accessible to either an English speaker or a Spanish speaker. I would say that we're also catering to the idea that both our cultures and the communities we work in are becoming homogeneous in some way, you know? So there's this growing demographic in the United States with Spanish-speaking languages, and it's the same thing down here. So I think that's part of the gesture too of how we're becoming one.
Can you talk a little bit about sound? Because it appears you have one issue that's about sound, and then I see that you host events where there's a lot of performance, and you also, like, the part of it's not, you know, the magazine is like a text, but then it's always being transformed into like a more tactile element. So can you talk about why, and also I was wondering how you plan to record, or like you archive these events for yourself, or you're gonna share?
Yeah. The archive is my hard drives, which is a mess, a big mess. Diego doesn't even have like, he doesn't take photographs or any, like his whole life is in a USB, and he's like, I'm not gonna deal with the archive in DiSONARE. So it's just me. And actually I would like to mention here, there's a friend who's working in DiSONARE who's here now. Her name is Lucía as well, Lucía Melia, but she started working with us a year ago or less probably, but she's taking care of the archive. She's helping me. She's a really wonderful poet and theorist. But anyway, going back to your idea of sound, and I don't know, I think it's also very intuitive, the way we work. There's not a real like methodology or strategy or anything, but we started becoming more interested in sound because of many things. One of them was we started doing interviews to artists. So the idea of voice again and of resonance and all that became just like a concept that we were trying to understand. And at the same time, the idea of notation or of score, you know, and of I think we're very inspired by concrete poetry and how the content is inside the page, but it also it can be off the page. So sound is a really good way to translate this, of course, and to have this like double experience of the piece. So
and when we were thinking about doing this issue on sound, we were always thinking of how sound could be materialized on paper, being a print publication. Having the events was just like the sort of an addendum to what we published in print.
mm-hmm. Exactly. So always trying to kind of transcend, I don't know if that's the correct word, or radicalizar the idea of medium, you know?
So so that piece you have there and the one before it, that's one of the very specific
Sound
ones.
pieces.
Which is a sound piece where the guy draws on the on paper and amplifies the sound of the trace of the charcoal on paper.
So this was, this guy is called Manuel Rocha y Turbide, and he's one of the kind of leading or started doing a lot of sound art in Mexico, but really kind of absorbing the sensibility of Mexico City, like the idea of sound that is very local as well. And this launch of the issue, the sound issue, was launched at the National Sound Archive house, which is in Coyoacán, and it's the house where the writer Octavio Paz died. But it's a really beautiful, great sound archive space. And we wanted to launch the magazine there, and also like kind of like as a little statement, we didn't want to have any readings. So it was just sound pieces in the garden of the Fonoteca Nacional. And they were all these amplified pieces of like the archive that was in paper in the magazine. So this is one of the pieces. I don't know if you wanna play it.
I don't know. Okay.
I think if you click.
Oh wait, no, it's the PDF. I'll pull it up on the.
Okay.
I'll pull it up on the other one, and we'll listen to it.
Okay.
Alrighty. Yeah, there's something listening to y'all talk about it. It's like we often forget that like an initial material translation is always between the written word and the spoken word, and even like the heard word and the oral word or something like this. Like that the materiality acts as like a translation and a substitution as well, and then like produces these different kinds of
Right.
All right, we listen.
We need access.
Oh no.
Yeah. Lucía.
I thought I had given it to you. Sorry.
It's okay.
Should I do it?
No, it's okay. Well, why don't we, if you want to do it.
You can share it with everyone.
Yeah.
After the conversation is
You can share it.
Maybe, can you talk a little bit about your experience of hosting workshops in the women's prison? And maybe we can watch videos from that as well.
Yeah.
And how did you decide to start working with this community?
Well, it's a long story, but I don't know, we wanted to kind of expand and have this alternative project apart from the printed issues and the events and all this. And we started becoming very interested in the problem of prisons in general, but in Mexico as well. And it was, as I say, like a very kind of impulsive thing to start. But yeah, we wanted to do activism through this methodology, which is DiSONARE, and to kind of bring this idea into a space or into a community that is not that doesn't have the el alcance, the reach to this kind of very niche forms of conceptual art and experimental art and all this. So I have a friend who works at, she works in an NGO called Reinserta, like reinsertion. And also we started becoming quite close at the same time with the poet Anne Waldman, the poet from New York, who her son lives here in Mexico City. So she comes a lot and to Mexico, and we started to do events in collaboration with her. And so there's this other thing that when I started going to the prison to meet this woman, the woman that we were going to work with before hosting the workshops, I saw or I was introduced to a pre-Hispanic dance that they do inside of the prison called Ometeotl. Ometeotl is a god, an Aztec god. And the story was really interesting, what was happening there, because some person many years ago from outside of the prison had gone inside and showed them this pre-Hispanic dance, which is like a whole spiritual discipline, methodology, etc. And it was part of the psychologic wing of the prison. So some of the women started doing this dance, and it's a group, it's a collective. But then after some time, the psychology or the psychology people from there suspended this ¿cómo se dice? Yeah, this project.
Oh, yeah.
But they started doing it by themselves. So it's a really amazing thing, because also the whole cosmology is in Nahuatl, in one of the biggest indigenous tongues or languages in Mexico. So I don't know how they do it, or they bring texts inside the prison, but they're starting to learn Nahuatl by themselves, and they discuss this and the elements and like the symbolic parts and all this. And I was just fascinated, like completely blown away by this thing that was happening inside of the prison. And more as a personal thing, and in my artistic practice as well, but I'm very interested in the relationship between ritual and performance and poetry. So I was very connected to this whole thing. And that is one story. And then another story is that Anne Waldman has this poem that is inspired by Maria Sabina, which is a Mazatec poet and shaman who died. But she was the shaman of the most famous shaman of the magic mushrooms in Mexico in the 60s. And Anne in the 70s or so, she was inspired by
the film still that you included?
Yes.
Yeah, that's connected to that.
Yeah.
So so Anne was inspired by Maria Sabina, and she was very involved in the feminist movement at the time and all this. So Maria Sabina had this shamanic chants that she would do in her ceremonies, that it's a chant that is like, I'm a woman poet, I'm a woman warrior, I'm a woman, like this kind of mantric poem. And then Anne took this thing and started doing her own poems in feminism. And then a big connection is that my father did some film when he was young, and he filmed Maria Sabina. He did this little documentary, which are the stills of the film. So, and actually Rodrigo Quintero is the one who showed me Anne Waldman's work. Once we were in my studio and I was reading the Maria Sabina, and Rodrigo was like, hey, you have to know this poet Anne Waldman that was inspired by Maria. So there was like this huge connection between like a constellation of things. So I proposed to Anne to come to do these workshops in the prison. And the women inside of the prison would do their own versions of the I'm a Woman poet, all these things. And
So
also,
can we play the video of the one before, Gabby? It's
Yeah, no, of course.
96. I guess this is the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Omete otro.
The second one. Did the women make their garments?
yes, they make it inside. There's these stories, really fun stories, that they like steal other people's, you know, like red T-shirt or something, and they like
Cut it out for the border.
yeah.
Wait, Gabby, can you
But
play
also one
90s?
of the things
I
for
will.
the first workshop. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Should we play the clip first?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
play.
So this is gonna be one of the poems of the women who took Anne's poem as inspiration.
El viento trae hielo, soy lo que soy. Soy el fuego que consume la soledad, la impotencia, el dolor. Soy lo que soy. Soy capaz, pero invisible. Soy alma gobernada por la voluntad, gobernada por el espíritu. Soy el espíritu que gobierna el alma, que mueve el viento y llega a una fusión con el agua. Una gota dentro del mar es el mar mismo. Soy lo que soy. Soy un sueño hecho realidad. Soy una ilusión. Soy todo, soy nada. Soy la pluma que mueve la voluntad para plasmar el pensamiento, el sentimiento, la emoción. Soy lo que soy. Una lágrima que corre por la mejilla, que no habla, que nadie interpreta. Soy la sonrisa que ahoga la lágrima y la cubre. Soy el dolor detrás de la sonrisa. Soy la verdad. Soy el corazón. Soy lo que soy. Soy lo que soy. Soy lo que soy. Soy el amor. El amor. El amor. Soy lo que soy.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So
How long was that workshop for?
Sorry?
How long was the workshop for with the women?
It was like 4 hours.
4 hours, and we were starting to do it once every 2 months, but it had to stop because of the pandemic situation.
Mm.
But the intention is to go back every 2 months and work with the women's writings.
And their performance as well. And we want to publish a little booklet by the end of the year or so. But then this was the first workshop that it was in November. And then we did another one right before the COVID started. And it was 1 week before the Women's March in Mexico. So it was all about like being a woman warrior like a warrior woman, because this warrior woman thing came a lot in the first workshop, you know, where they like kind of, it's a thing about identity, I guess, but there was a lot of this like warrior energy. So we decided to do the second workshop on that, and it was really hard, that second workshop, because we really like steered the flame, you know, inside, and they of course know what's happening outside, and they know about all the feminism and the march that was going to be like a week later. So I actually, the next image, if you click, it says "Basta de feminicidios," like stop femicides in Mexico, because of course they're very related to all of this terrible reality. And it's a really intense process for us, for the people who go in, and for the people inside. It's very intimate.
But we have found that this working with what they're dealing through art and performance has really helped them like to really develop a voice.
Yeah, they weren't familiar with performance and with collective performance, and they were asking us, you know, like, what is this? Like, what are we doing? And in the classroom where we did the workshop, it said like zona de creatividad, like the zone of creativity. And we were like, well, it's that what we're doing, you know, it's like it's the interzone, or it's the rhizome. So that's why the name is rizoma, because it's a lot about improvisation and about feeling like when is your time to start performing, or to, you know, it's very intuitive the way the things happen.
So Abby wanted to know, re this project. Earlier you mentioned that the program, the women who had together learned the Nahuatl dance and started learning the language, that was suspended by the prison, and then they continued on their own. But why was it suspended again? Why was that?
It was just a program that didn't gather motion within the, you know, the ideas of the people who ran alternative programs within the prison. But it was such an important thing for the inmates that they just carried on independently.
And actually, the story is really beautiful, because the people, the guy who started this program started it in the men's prison,
in the men's wing.
In the men's wing, and they saw it work so good. Then one of the inmates, the male inmates, came to the women's prison and showed them this. But it was, as I said, it was part of the psychological program. But then it was suspended. We don't know why. It's really sad and really horrible. Like the people who are in charge of the prison, the directors and all this, it's like,
and it's incredibly bureaucratic as well. So trying to I mean, they cannot affect change as inmates, so the only way they could really find to continue their practice was to do it independently and self-organizing.
Yeah.
You have to get approval before every workshop about kind of what you're going to be discussing or things like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you have, I mean, obviously you have to check in every single piece of equipment you're bringing, and so it's very...
Actually, one of the things in the video, you saw the things they're wearing in their ankles. They're called coyoleras, which are these seeds that sound. But part of our agreement between us and them was, I told them, I'll bring you the coyoleras. And it was like this kind of exchange of conocimiento, you know, or of like, you'll do the dance for us, and you'll show us and you'll talk about it, and, you know, and we'll do the poetry and the performance. But it was kind of this deal of, I'll bring you the coyoleras. So it was fun because, you know, I wrote it in the prison like as part of the workshop, but they of course keep it inside. and they were so excited because they hadn't danced with the coyoleras with a sound for probably years. So it was really like a really powerful moment.
So I just wanted to make a little bit of space before we open it up to other questions. So if y'all have some questions, send them to me now. But I just wanted to make a little bit of space for both of you to talk about how the magazine like lives in relation to the rest of your artwork and writing. Like, how do you think of what is that intersection?
I would say that I find almost no distinction at all when I work in my personal writing or when I edit the magazine. I'm always trying to investigate the same subjects, you know, and I find it as an excuse to, you know, to feed both my personal work and the work I do with the magazine. So I mean I find the lines are very blurred for me, to be honest.
I guess for me too, but just for my psychic health, I think I should start separating them a little bit more. But I think that, and like my input in magazine is a little bit, it's a lot about the form or of the medium. So in my own practice, I have a lot of these processes or little experiments that I do with word and with sound and with material, like how is this translation from medium to medium happening and all this. So I think that it's kind of like a thinking structure that is not separated one to another, and then it just eventually happens in the magazine as well. And we're talking about it all the time. I mean, we live together, we work together, so it's very intuitive, it's very fluid.
I would almost say that, like, if you see Lucia's work there visually, you can find many parallels to the way we publish in the magazine as well. So it's.
Well, I was also gonna say, I feel like you both have an interest in water, but it manifests in a very different approach, you know? Like, in Diego, you recently wrote an article for the Brooklyn Rail about the water system in Mexico City. And Lucy, I feel like you put your poems in water and you put them in the freezer or something. And I was like wondering, I'm like, okay, what is this? Is this something you talk about a lot, or?
I think that's a very good example of the process of how we edit the magazine. You know, I think when you put those things together, even if you don't have to talk about them a lot, I mean, that's the end result of what we find.
I think also water is a really big element in Mexico, like from a political point of view, from a historical or archival point of view, from an architectural point of view. Like in Mexico, we're very connected to the idea of water, to the crisis of water.
Especially in Mexico City.
Yeah, especially in Mexico City, that, you know, is sinking basically, and it was built over a lake.
This used to be a lake.
A lake that was drained, and if they probably had left the lake, do you think it would have been like a more efficient like way of living?
I think it would have to be,
Yeah.
I mean,
and then how does that affect, like, now with coronavirus, like, you know, you need clean water to, you know, survive.
So ever since the lake was drained, the issue of bringing water into the city has been super problematic. So what happens now is there's dams in neighboring states and towns. So what you have to do to get water into Mexico City is to propel it uphill, then treat it in chlorination plants before it gushes out of taps, you know? So it's an extremely bad problem. And then also, since we tubed all the rivers that were in the city once, getting the wastewater out is also a big problem. So we're just at the mercy of the problem of water in the city all the time. I also speak a little bit in that essay about how the draining of the lake affects earthquakes here. So since we're just standing on sandy, moist ground for over 500 years now, what happens with earthquakes is that they're amplified. So they're much stronger than they should be just because we're on, on a lake bed. I wrote that essay when I was really scared with PTSD after the quake, so. Yeah.
We can post that, share that, a link to that as well for people so they can see.
Do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions yet, but I wanted to ask y'all what is your, I don't know, I feel like it's really cheesy to be like, what are your dreams for the magazine? But that's the question.
Okay. I'm all about cheesiness, so don't worry.
Yeah.
But the dream?
One of the dreams we have, and we're to take a few steps to materialize a little, is to books as well. So not just curate a publication, but to do individual books by individual artists. So our first experiment was the translation of Nora Khan's little book, and we're looking to do 2 more books this year. So that can be a bit of an offshoot.
What books are you looking to
I would
make?
say,
So we're gonna do we translated Jonas Mikas's Words Apart. So that'll be one, like a bilingual bilingual book of poems. And we're in the middle of translating a book by Peter Lambert Wilson as well, on the ideas of chaos and temporary and autonomous zones, etc.
we also had this this idea, I don't know if it's going to happen anymore, but to do a little book by Cecilia Vicuña, who had her show in MOAC just when the COVID started. And we wanted to have it ready by then, but of course it didn't happen. And we wanted to co-edit it with a poet called Rocío Cerón from Mexico. So we have a lot of ideas and a lot of things already happening. But yeah, the idea is to make like little DiSONAREs, kind of more focused, and also be open to collaborations between people from different parts, or like unfinished processes, things like that. So it's like the new era of DiSONARE is going to be this little.
I think the perpetual dream is to continue to be able to do things in our own terms, in terms of publishing. So.
Yeah, and also build this community. Like for me, my dream is really to like that this community, it's not only colleagues but actually friends, like to really build a true friendship and connect people also, and to be an open platform that can still question itself and that can still be ambiguous and be I don't know. I wouldn't like to grow like to be this magazine that publishes like 1,000 million copies, and like that is definitely not my dream. So
I feel like for a little while, like whenever people would ask us like what we want to do with Precog, like our answer was always like, the goal is not world domination. Like the goal is really like, like one little thing at a time.
Just get the forthcoming issue out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just having enough money to print the magazine is always my dream every year.
yeah, that's
always a dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
A big problem.
Do you guys do all your printing in Mexico?
Yeah.
Yeah, right here in Mexico City.
Nice.
Yeah. Also, our next issue will be on psychogeography.
Oh,
So
nice.
we want to bring together, we want to work specifically on psychogeography of New York and Mexico. So also like editorial and poetic, like poets or writers from the past that collaborated together. So like really study more this kind of invisible lines of where we come from, what's the continuity, what are we responding to, and the relationship between cities as characters as well. We're really inspired by Bolaño, Roberto Bolaño, and I don't know, just a bunch of people who've traversed Mexico and who've collaborated in the past. So yeah, that's the next issue, issue 9, psychogeographies.
And Heidi wanted to know what you're reading right now.
So I like to reread things. So I go over books maybe twice or thrice at times. So I'm reading the Mexican novelist Homero Arigis, who is an amazing Mexican symbolist. And I'm also reading my favorite fiction writer, who's David Salai. His latest book is called Turbulence.
And I just started a book called Plain Water by Anne Carson, who has this really beautiful essay called actually The Anthropology of Water. And what else am I reading? I just started reading Breathing, Chaos and Poetry by Franco Bifo Berardi. ¿Qué más? I'm reading also The Poetics of Space, Gaston Bachelard, really, really good. That's it at the moment. Yeah.
Cool.
What are you reading, Gabby?
Oh my God, what am I reading? That's a really good question. You know what? I'm reading, I'm listening to The Odyssey on tape right now.
Wow.
Feels really silly, but it's this translation. It's the first translation into English by a woman. So that's what I listen to now when I walk to the studio, and then I have a whole like host of other books that like I'm reading, like the End of Policing book, and like listening to all these lectures on YouTube, and yeah, I'm reading a lot of essays right now about like early Christian, like medieval Christian iconography as it relates to like women's bodies. Really esoteric shit.
Nice.
How do you find listening to books on tape?
Huh?
How do you find listening to books on tape? Do you feel like you absorb it as much as you would reading it?
I feel like there's no way I would read The Odyssey again unless I'm reading it. But it's a very good translation. Highly recommend.
Read that.
Should we unmute everyone and just get to the next stage?
Thank y'all. Thank everybody for coming. Please stay and hang if you want. It would be great to get to chat with everyone, and you're now free to unmute yourselves. So please come join the party.
Hola, Ana.
Hi, Anna.
Oh,
Hey, guys.
Jason.
Happy to see you.
Nice to see you.
Also, Lucía and Diego, this is my friend Kimberly, who I introduced you to over now, but Kim's is also a brilliant poet on psychogeographies specifically. I know she's like shaking.
Really?
She really is.
Awesome.
Wow, amazing.
Stay in touch.
Yeah, you're invited to the next issue of DiSONARE.
And a brilliant translator. You like how I'm just like, I love our friends. Yeah.
How long do you normally work on an issue for before you print it?
Like a year, but we do everything the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I understand. I get that. Yeah.
We make deadlines to ignore them and then just have a month of a lot of working.
Yeah.
It's always like in Christmas, which I think it's brilliant because it's like a way of avoiding family. We're like, no, we have like all these deadlines, we can't go. So, and there's Lucía Melia. I hope she says hello. be
Hey,
part of this.
hey everyone.
Hi. Thank you for sharing all the permissions.
Oh, don't worry, I freaked out because I didn't knew if I share with you the audio. I think I didn't before, but now you have it.
Okay.
And
That's good.
we can put it up in when we upload the whole chat. People can listen.
Yeah.
We have to do a little bit of that, like with our archive for Precog time, is like putting up everyone's links.
Oh,
Yeah. Everyone's links? No, we have the videos up.
oh, for the talks. Yeah, no, we don't have that.
Sarah says she loves us. Sarah, join our chat.
Where's Sarah?
She's down here. She just doesn't have a video.
Maybe she
Left.
oh, she is.
There.
There she is. Ah, ahí
There
está.
you are.
She's on
How
mute.
are you? Are you in the boat?
I'm unmuting you.
She's muted.
Oh, I feel like I made it so that people can. Oh, okay. Sorry. Now you can unmute yourselves.
Hi,
Hey
Hi,
there.
Sarah. How are you?
friend's house in beautiful Maine.
Oh,
Ooh.
nice.
There are children. One is plugged in on an iPad. How are
Did
you
you
guys?
just go for a run?
Yeah, this is just how I dress these days. My new pandemic fashion.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. That was so good. I had no idea about the whole project you guys did in the prisons. It's so fascinating. Is there any written documentation of it?
Nope. There's just a little article.
There's
on
a
this
few
site.
articles, yeah. It's really hard to get permission to show the content, you know, because there's a lot of legal issues around it. So, but we'll get to it, I guess.
Yeah, showing their faces and all this. But we want to definitely. It's like a thing that is starting as well. So
So will it be able to start again when things
yeah,
Yes, for sure. That's
mean,
the idea, yeah.
there's a big process now of decarceration. You know, like it's happening all around.
Mhm.
So thank God, there's a lot of women that are being released. And I mean, there's also COVID things happening inside, and like there's huge, complex things, or collection of things. But we will be able to go back.
Lucia, do they have to work there? Like how people in prison work here? Do they do really cheap work over there too?
They can. It's optional, yeah.
No, but everyone works because
Mhm.
there's a small economy inside.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you want to buy your papitas or like,
Yeah.
you know, your shampoo or things, you need to have money. So a lot of people work inside, like, you know, like I'll wash your clothes or I'll clean your room or things like that inside.
But they don't like produce products.
I'll make the toilet wine.
Oh my god.
Here we go. Hola, Rorro.
So you're talking about like industries where they make like license plates and like corporations get basically
There's
free
no big
labor
industry.
Yeah.
from inmates.
I was amazed when I
Are
read
they
that
private in
Victoria's
this
Secret was getting stuff made from the prisons. Did you see that?
That's
There's
crazy.
a lot of company.
Oh.
That seems like a weird church.
Neutrogena. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I can't buy anymore after seeing that.
Yeah, all of these things are super secretive too. Like obviously, you know, like no one is making like the database of prison labor, but like all of
wants to think their face cream is getting made at the prison.
not on the brand label. But, like all of the lists that are going around are also like 8 years old. Like it's impossible. You have to go see individual brands and research whether they still participate or whether they divested or like what the deal is. It's like pretty Anyway, all the research is independent research now, guys.
I have a question. Are the prisons in Mexico run by the state or are they private, or is it a mix?
They some are state and some are co-owned. So it's like a mix of enterprises and state. But the state is always involved in every single prison. Just
Very involved.
some of them are co-owned. Yeah, co-owned.
Yeah, and there's also
Yeah, so you get
different.
different kinds of prisons, like I think you do in the United States. You have federal prisons, state prisons, and local prisons as well.
And they each have different set of
Yeah.
laws and things.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
are a
but-
lot of the women, do you know if why they're there? Do they tell you like their full story?
Yeah, and it's very striking to hear because it's mostly they're involved in crimes which are not really
Like very
neither planned by them, or like they're just helping out, a boyfriend who wanted to kidnap someone and she was involved because she had to drive the car, but she really wasn't in on anything. So there's a whole spectrum of things. But
Or they help plan that kidnap that never happened, and then they're there for 25 years, or things like that.
and then there's the occasional one who just stole, a chocolate bar at the Oxxo, so it's.
And of course, there's also the real cases, but it's really heartening to listen to their stories and like how you start getting kind of like addicted to violence or to things. And many of them are mothers and they have their children there
In the prison?
in the prison
Until they're 6, no?
until they're 6. It depends on different prisons.
Wow.
But they do a lot of the NGO that we work with. They do a lot of
Work with the children.
work with the children and like.
Because I think if they reach 6 years of age and they're not claimed by family members, then they just go to foster care.
And that's really sad when they take the child away from the mother. So what this NGO does a lot, it's called Reinserta, insertion. They have like a continuity with what happens with each child. Like they connect with family, or if they go to a home, they get the news to the mother inside, and like all this different.
So they help keep track of the child, so it helps the mother.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah. This NGO is really amazing what they've done. They've been around for like 10 years, and only through them we were able to start this. If not, it's basically impossible to start any project in the prison if you don't have that link.
Does that organization also help women once they get out of prison, like reinsert into society too? Because I'm sure that's a problem. Like they need to get jobs, and maybe they haven't done anything for 10 years.
Yeah, that's what they do mostly. So, but they begin the process when they are incarcerated.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also during the prison, they finish like their school, or like they prepare them since they're in the prison. But what the big problem is that lawyers, individual lawyers for each cases, sometimes it's a question of 2,000 pesos, like $200 or less. And like they're the abandoned people of the abandoned people, because no one like will look at that case and will pay for that.
Well, for the fees of
the
of
fee,
the defense.
so it's really hard to listen to this.
And how did you meet those people? That like non-profit.
Los de Reinserta.
Uh-huh.
I met Jimena, who's a friend of mine from childhood, and I stopped seeing her for a long time, but then I knew she was working in Reinserta, so I just called her one day and proposed this project, and she said yes.
That's really cool.
What are you painting?
I'm painting my grandfather. I'm painting a dead old brown man.
¿Cuántas copias? Como you have the same painting, like more than one? ¿Ah?
Estoy haciendo 3, making 3.
Para cada, como para different people, or?
For my uncles, the only people that'll be buying my paintings these days.
So you have to paint your family, so they
Basically.
I'm
Honestly. It's a desperate situation, but my grandfather was pretty cool.
Yeah. Wait, you still working on the book on tu papá?
See, but we were going to go to print when the COVID hit, and apparently we're going on print next Monday again.
Wow.
And it's a book about our journey to Iran and Egypt and Jordan, but mainly Iran.
What's it gonna be called?
It's gonna be called Islam Amada.
Okay.
Beloved Islam. But it's also wordplay in Spanish, which sounds like it's the shit.
¿Es la mamada?
La mamada.
Está bueno.
Yeah. It was every step of the way was a real hassle with my father. It was actually pretty terrible, but we did manage to get through it. And then it was like this big problem because we couldn't go to print. But I was told today that we're going next Monday, so I'm really excited about finishing that. And I will gladly share with everyone a PDF file or whatever you want.
Yeah.
Where is like your girlfriend?
She's here at home.
Okay.
She's downstairs.
Doing her own work. Like
Exactly. I mean,
Roro, I was telling them about the place you live in.
In where exactly? In its
The
house.
The walls you live inside.
Your house in San Angel.
I was telling them about the house.
Yeah, it is really beautiful.
That's not what we heard. We heard there's just like a lot of like 20-year-old garbage in the fridge.
Well, when we moved in, it was really a shithole. But I mean, we pay, let's say, like almost. I don't say I have a hard time converting it, but we pay, let's say, 12,000 pesos, which is, I don't know, something like $600. And we have like a front porch and like a backyard and like extra rooms for anything. Like have like this studio, and then I have my office, and then Natalia has like a laboratory where she makes soaps and creams and stuff. And I mean, honestly, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it scares some people off because they think it's haunted because it looks haunted, but that's kind of like just the look more than anything else, because personally I've just never had the good chance to meet with a ghost, and I can't wait for the day. So jealous of everyone who
Rodrigo,
their stories. Yes.
Whatever happened to the vampires script movie?
Well, the vampire script movie kind of like was Oh, good. I've written a few of them, so I'm guessing like the prehistoric vampire movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one really kind of like stayed at that level of as a script, sadly. I was told that it was exceedingly expensive to do that kind of thing. And also I was told that my vampires weren't as sexy as the Hollywood vampires that we're all accustomed to seeing. And I thought that was really cool, and that, you know, my professor lacked some vision, but in the end I ended up writing something else and shooting that.
Cool.
But I do want to say that for like a little competition last year, I wrote this script about this like vampire woman that was originally like an Aztec and was bitten during like the first wave of European vampires reaching the Americas. And then she had sort of like become a hoarder of historic objects. And so she like kidnaps this person who happened to have like in his collection one of her childhood toys that was given to her by her mother, and she wanted it back. And she was like, you know, this tiny indigenous vampire kind of like torturing this man that was like really, you know, no idea of like the world that she has seen and the world that she kind of like sees and lives every day. And he's like trying to bargain with her, who's certainly not interested in anything other than her toy and maybe him as a snack. So that was a really exciting use of the vampire theme. And this theme of like the Aztec vampires, I'm trying to like work it in to another project that I'm making with animation, which does also kind of like seems like a more like a better way of approaching the vastness of the concept of Aztec vampires.
Como vampire TV show, como una serie.
Exactly. Well, it's not. They're not like the whole show doesn't revolve around them, but they are sort of like an interesting use for this sort of cruelty that the vampire is known for, that the Aztec is known for, but also the Aztecs weren't really kind people even to their more immediate neighbors. So like they're the most racist people you could imagine, and they're extremely violent. So it's kind of like a very peculiar reversal of a lot of things that we kind of like take for granted today.
Como que, like, what would they do?
Well, the thing is, at this time I have them kind of like in a 19th century Mexico context, which is also kind of like a different context than now, but like they really are. So the idea, I'm having a lot of trouble actually with understanding my relationship to diversity, and like how a movement like Black Lives Matter is happening in the States, and I feel like so distant from anything like that ever happening here in Mexico, where you see like so much elitism and classism, and like there's not even that much diversity, you know. Like we would like to say that there is, I'm sure, and there's some in like some aspects of society, but you know, mostly it's just like light brown and white people kind of like also ruling all of the institutions and all of the grants and all of the money and all everywhere. So it's also kind of like hard to talk about that, because even in the drug cartels, they're white people at the top.
Yeah.
You know, there's some of them that don't, but it's more often the case that they are white people. But it's a very strange
the politicians
sort of like space to kind of like talk about how indigenous people actually were, because I'm sure that the original Mesoamerican person would be completely devastated seeing like the indigenous people of today that are essentially Catholic and super, you know, like their whole mythology and their idea of culture is so ingrained with like the invaders' church and some sort of like strange mixture with their own like previous beliefs. And it's
is there anyone that would do like something like, I guess like a movement to re-educate, or to be like, hey, here's this like re-educate in your original religion or something?
Well, I don't know of any movement like that, to be honest. A lot of it was erased and literally burned, and I'm sure a lot of it was invented that people believe now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like how a bunch of indigenous groups were already believing that the invading forces were godly figures, and I'm almost positive that all of those are lies that were sort of like injected into their belief system. And I personally understand that that now is part of the story, and I don't necessarily want to like destroy all of that, but I do kind of like want to have this sort of characters sort of like crashing for like, you know, the hipster side of me, the absolutely my grandfather's side, and also like just the being in Mexico and being like of a very unknown origin and having almost like no history, you know, like I don't really, my grandfather never met his grandparents, you know, like he was like the son of a bastard during the Mexican Revolution, and that's kind of like the story of most people here. So it's sort of like going back into the past and like having a lot of fun with it.
Okay.
In my view.
I think it's gonna be good. I think you just gotta finish it.
On the other hand, I do feel like I need some sort of like more varied team of writers, because like right now it's like a rich Jew guy and me. and we work great together, but I think like it would be really valuable to have like more indigenous people involved and having their thoughts and like how they see themselves, you know.
I mean, you can do that. Can you go like just talk to people?
Well, I'm really trying to figure out the best way to go about that.
Get a translator. Go with Kimmy. Go hire Kimmy. She's right there in the chat. And, you know, Kimberly Crude.
Okay.
And you just go do it.
Making deals happen here.
Yeah.
I feel like Instagram sourcing is surprisingly effective. If you're like, listen, here's my idea. Is there anyone who has more of a specific connection to this that wants to like help out or talk or like collaborate? I don't know.
I'm sure there's a bunch of indigenous writers and translators, and you can get like all the angles, you know. You can get like the really angry indigenous translator, you know, and really connect it to your vision, Roro, of like what was it really like, you know, before we were so embedded in a colonial thinking structure. So
I have had like conversations with people about this that have had like some sort of relationship with that, but like also if we spoke with like this person from Maya origin, it's so varied, the different possibilities, because like this is also specific to the Aztec, which were one of the most completely obliterated peoples. And at the same time, I'm sure like all of the Nahua languages kind of like came from one, so they can't be that different. In some sense, they must be similar, but it's kind of hard to also kind of like speak for any sort of like community, you know, even, you know, weird hipsters. I wouldn't speak for my own community.
Yeah. But I also think the idea of violence even though it happened in both societies, was very different. Like the violence, probably in pre-Hispanic terms, was more like for a ritual dissipation, you know, like an excess of energy, and colonial violence is way more like strategical and like about the center and conquering, and they were conquerors in different indigenous communities. But I don't know, I think what's interesting is also the approach to violence in like the different ideological structures.
Have you heard about the Wars of the Roses?
In England?
No.
Okay,
That's a good point. No, there is the War of the Roses. In fact, in Spanish son las guerras floridas.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant like that movie about the divorced couple.
No, las guerras floridas, or like, I don't know exactly how you would transfer it, but like, was essentially, instead of having the World Cup or the Olympics, the Aztecs would organize a war where people would kill each other for sport. And it was done systematically in order to sort of like kill the best warriors of all of the other groups, while at the same time, kind of like, since they had like, they would also recruit some people and they would sacrifice people, and it was done in such a specific and systematic and pervasive way that it's honestly hard to conceive of such cruelty and like cleverness to the strategy for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they were the right people to do it. So I am excited, and I am hoping that after the pandemic, we can go back to that.
To look forward to.
Something to look forward to.
Okay, is anyone anyone else want to talk or say something?
Wow.
Okay, sorry. I need to have some control over this group. It's 8:30.
All right, you guys.
I think if no one else has something to say, then I'm gonna send you all to dinner. If not, then we could be here for hours.
Let's do it, guys. I need some beer.
Okay. But also join next week.
All right.
She's like, bye for now, but come next week.
Next week, we're going to be talking to artist Mina Hassan. Yeah. And she's a painter.
He's great.
And she'll be, telling us about her art. Thank you, Lucia and Diego.
Yeah.
The presentation was really great.
Thank you so much for the invitation.